as was agreed by Member Gopi, who is prepared to speak, as agreed by Minister Marais, who's prepared to speak, as agreed by Minister Max, who is prepared to speak. Nobody else was consulted on the matter with regard to coming forward. What Member Ace says about talking about agriculture, economic, wasn't even discussed.
Okay. So, Honourable Chief Whip, I will now ask you all to respect, I don't know who's on which planet here, but I am firmly in control of this House. And I have now taken the opinions of both sides, and I'm going to request that we proceed with the next order, and it is indeed going to be Minister Marais' Cultural Affairs and Sport, which is vote 13. So I would like to ask the Secretary to read the next order, please.
Vote 13, Cultural Affairs and Sports, Western Cape Adjustments Appropriation Bill.
Thank you very much. May I call the House to order, please?
Speaker,
sorry, I was about to introduce and recognize you. I see the Honourable, the Minister, Minister Marais. You may proceed, Minister.
Thank you. Speaker, due to the changing pressures placed on a Western Cape government to deliver services to our people, most notably as a result of the national government's mismanagement of public funds, it is imperative that we reconsider our budget and reallocate funds to where they are most needed. In this way, we serve the people of the Western Cape as best we can with the very little that we have. Honourable Speaker, the Department of Culture Affairs and Sport's main appropriation is at 725,049,000 rand, and the adjusted appropriation sees our budget increase by 2,284,000 rand. I thank the Minister of Finance, Dr. Ivan Meyer, and my Cabinet colleagues for prioritising culture affairs and sport by approving an increase in the adjusted appropriation. Despite the difficult economic environment in which we find ourselves, the adjustment of these funds will indeed assist the Western Cape Government in our mission to encourage excellence and inclusiveness in sport and culture through the effective, efficient and sustainable use of our resources. In moving to excellence, we will create the conditions for access and mass participation, talent identification and skills development, which essentially creates an enabling environment for all who call the Western Cape home. Speaker, highlights of our adjustments include 1 million has been allocated to cover medical and ancillary expenses of the rugby's 7th series Cape Town leg to take place on the 9th and the 10th of December of this year. 500,000 was made available for the intake of 25 interns for the after-school game changer. The funding is for grade 4 tutors in IT facilitation, maps and site coordination. 530,000 was also made available by the Department of Public Service and Administration for programs which divert young people away from antisocial behavioural activities. Speaker, if we are honest and frank about our current circumstances, it is safe to say that our limited budget has and will for a significant period of time place constrained pressure on our service delivery footprint as a government. We can attribute the blame of our failing economy, deteriorating moral fibre and consequent conflict to a national unaccountable administration or even state capture, yet and still the finances available or lack thereof will remain insufficient to deliver on our fundamental mandate to the people we serve. Together with our clean governance in the Western Cape, prioritising service delivery and political will to increase economic growth through partnerships to unlock opportunities, our effectiveness allows us to explore prospects to collaboratively build on our social capital and support each other in our mutual goals through constructive partnerships. In the wake of our dismal economic situation, it is our duty to become more innovative in our business, as it's not all doom and gloom. The Western Cape is still the leading province in economic growth as investors have more confidence in a well-managed administration. It would of course be easier to fall into the common despondence now surrounding us, but we have the potential to thrive as a province and to restore hope, motivate trust and to inspire assurance, all of which is much needed at present. Speaker, in the face of the budgetary pressures, there is no doubt in my mind that our dedicated officials will continue to contribute to our vision of a socially inclusive creative, active and connected Western Cape. I implore our ANC members to engage with their national counterparts on the dire budget pressures under which the Western Cape government must deliver, but more importantly, to alert them to the fact that it's the people of the Western Cape who are suffering under their maladministration. For far too long has sport and culture affairs been politicized. It is now time for us to join hands to take our beautiful country forward once more. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I see the Honourable. I see Leonard Max. You may proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. As the chairperson of the Standing Committee for Cultural Affairs and Sport, I am responsible in leading the committee to execute its oversight functions responsibly, effectively, and without fear or favour. This is what we, for some time now, experienced at the National Assembly, subsequent to recent Constitutional Court judgments. Speaker, before I focus on the performance of the department, it is important to remind this House where these oversight committees assumes their responsibilities. Section 114 of the Constitution states, a provincial, and I quote, a provincial legislature must provide mechanisms to ensure that all provincial executive organs of state in the province are accountable to it, and to maintain oversight of the executive and exercise the provincial executive authority in the province, including the implementation of legislation in any provincial organ of state, unquote. Further, that the handbook for members of provincial parliament legislatures, oversight and accountability, Annexure 2 of page 91 states, and I quote, be analytic and display independent rigor. Doing oversight is a bit like being detective. So do detect and remember. Always ensure that your oversight reports covers effectiveness, efficiency, and economy. For example, is money being put to good use? In other words, value for money. It is the cost by output reasonable, given economies of scale, etc. Now, Honourable Speaker, these provisions, as were espoused by the Constitutional Court case, Economic Freedom Fighters versus Speaker of the National Assembly and others. And during this, His Honourable Chief Justice Mogoeng states as follows, and I quote, similarly, the National Assembly, and by extension Parliament, is the embodiment of the centuries of old dreams and legitimate aspirations of all our people. It is the voice of all South Africans, especially the poor, the voiceless and the last remembered. It is the watchdog of state's resources, the enforcer of the fiscal discipline, and cost effectiveness for common good for all our people. It also bears the responsibility to play an oversight role over the executive and state organs and to ensure that constitutional and statutory obligations are properly executed. For this reason, it fulfills a preeminently unique role of holding the executive accountable for the fulfillment of promises to the populace through the State of the Nation addresses, in this case SOPA, budget speeches, policies, legislation, and duly undergirded by the affirmation of the oath of office constitutionally administered to the executive before the assumption of office. Parliament also passes legislation with due regard to the needs and concerns of the broader public. The willingness and obligation to do so is reinforced by each member's equal, irreversible public declaration of allegiance to the Republic, obedience, respect, vindication of the Constitution, and all law of the Republic. Obedience to the best of their abilities, and in sum, Parliament is the mouthpiece, the eyes, and the service delivery ensuring machinery of the people. No doubt, it is an irreplaceable feature of good governance in South Africa. Unquote. Speaker, the above are the empowering provisions which guides all standing committees and not by political or personal interest. Public interest is the only and only objective. As a result, the purpose of my input today is to evaluate as to where the DCAS performance met the yardstick set by the Constitution and the related court judgment. Speaker, I am already on record about this department's performance. Just over a month ago, I highlighted, while reflecting on his 2016 and 17 annual report, just how efficient the Western Cape Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport is. The fact might be surprising to some, but to a DA-led government, efficiency, what we do, is what we do, corrupt-free is who we are, and empowering residents is part of our core business. The empowerment of residents is exactly what this department does. Speaker, this is why we welcome the upward adjustment of the department's 2017 and 2018 budget from 725 million and 49,000 rand to 727,333,000 rand, which is an increase of 2,284,000 rand. Speaker, the department's vision is to create a socially inclusive, creative, active, and connected Western Cape. This means they have an enormous task at their hands, as they have to ensure that programs and activities in the arts and culture, museums, heritage, languages, archives, sport, recreation services, and library services are efficient and effectively implemented. All of these services, Honourable Speaker, are extremely important because at any given time, individuals at every level of society engage with them. I am encouraged by the department's crime prevention pilot project in identifying our areas in the gang-ridden areas on the Western Cape and in the Cape Flats. 531,000 rand has been allocated to this pilot program. I trust that this initiative will yield the necessary success and contribute towards the overall crime prevention strategy guided by the Department of Community Safety. Speaker, I am further encouraged by Minister Andrew Moraes and the department because if you look at the aims of the department in 2017, adjusted estimates of provincial expenditure, they clearly state that they are encouraging excellence and inclusiveness in sport and culture through the effective, efficient, sustainable use of their resources and through creative partnerships. Deputy Speaker, the department is clearly demonstrating that it wants to bring residents together. It wants to ensure that no one is excluded, despite what their language or cultural practices might be. In fact, they go on to say that they are aiming to make the Western Cape the sports and culture center of South Africa. And they will create conditions for access and mass participation, talent identification, and skills development. As the DA-led government, Western Cape government, we pride ourselves in creating an inclusive, connected society. Honourable Speaker, as with any department, there will be challenges because we don't live in a perfect world. If you look at programs 2, 3, and 4, which is cultural affairs, library, and archive services, and sport and recreation,
Order.
You'll notice that there has been a decrease in expenditure when compared to the first quarter of the 2016-2017 financial year. This is completely understandable, Speaker, as in the first quarter of any new financial year, you always want to ensure that there are no issues with your administration. Speaker, here I'd like to commend the Minister and her department as they have ensured, as part of Program 1, which is administration, that additional graduate interns were appointed. thus giving opportunities to residents and especially the youth of the Western Cape. Honorable Speaker, through these opportunities, we are empowering and capacitating our people, which in turn improves the skill levels of our residents. Speaker, I have no doubt that the 2017 and 2018 financial year will once again be a success, if not a greater success, for the Minister in her department. As chairperson of the Standing Committee on Cultural Affairs and Sport, I look forward to working with and ensuring that the department continues to deliver on its vision, creating an inclusive, creative, and connected Western Cape. Honorable Speaker, on a conspectus of the aforesaid and mindful of the relevant laws and the department's commitment and given the circumstances, I can unequivocally and without fear of contradiction states to this House that the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport, under the leadership of the HUD, Mr. Brent Waters, but more in particular with the political leadership of Minister Murray, passes constitutional muster and delivered not only on their legal mandate, as alluded to, but also on their moral obligations. I would like to thank all committee members for their respective contributions in ensuring that the people's mandate is executed. Further, I wish all members of this House a blessed festive season and a prosperous new year. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Max. Order, please. Honourable Danke, your members next. Honourable Gopi, you may proceed. Chief Whip Ace, can you just get your caucus in order, please? You have a member on the floor. Thank you. You may proceed, Honourable Gopi.
Thank you, Speaker. The challenge in this vote is that it is always receiving small allocation during the main budget allocation. Naturally, any additional funding is therefore welcomed. However, it is not that simple. The shifting of funds between programs and votes must be scrutinized efficiently. The reduction of more than 5 million must be explained, and which of the library services that have been adversely affected. The issue of savings on leave gratitude for officials who retired from service cannot be accepted as savings because it should have been dealt with during the main budget cycle. The department must qualify why need for additional office equipment. What are the circumstances that led to the need for additional office equipment that was not foreseen during the main budget? The illustrates the lack of strategic planning on the part of the management at the senior level, which must allow and remedial action taken if necessary. The savings identified due to the slow filing of posts is a recurring remedial since the previous year and is annoying. Any funds taken from the language service must be used to address a growing intolerance of language and cultural stereotypes in the province. This should be one of the core mandate of the language service in the program too. No such fund should be shifted unless these objectives are met, as the MEC just mentioned that she said that funds must happen where it is most needed. The silliness displayed by the department in shifting of funds to supplement funding for over expenditure in compensation of employees is noticed. We can never accept and support this mismanagement of funds because it amounts to gross financial mismanagement. What are these goods and services that were reprioritized, giving rise to shift of funds in the EPWP? Which assets were stolen and lost in the museum services? Were they not insured? Was there no reserves kept for that purpose instead of compromising other essential goods and services? It is nonsensical to shift funds merely to fund leave gratitude payout to former employees. In fact, this must be investigated to get to the root cause of such financial mismanagement. The fluctuation of government garage tariffs must be relooked at carefully. If not, it may be used to squander taxpayers' money. Why is there a lot of funding shifted towards government garage tariffs? How are the savings identified under machinery and equipment, goods and services for reprioritization? More transparency is required to give proper explanation and substantiate in this regard. On the other hand, is the EPWP ran by NPIs? Under provincial financing, was there a need to prioritize funding 1 million to Rugby World Cup Sevens, whereas there are a lot of compelling reasons to direct that funding to more deserving unfunded community sporting codes? This is not accepted. The City of Cape Town is a well-resourced and claims to be well-managed municipality, yet the department were unable to discover that they were in arrears and only realized when it accumulated 760,000. This excuse does not make sense and remain unacceptable. Why the municipal bills have been funded up to 3 million for equity share allocation of this vote? This is unacceptable. The most shocking is the shift of 4.8 million to vote 1, Department of the Premier, to upgrade, develop, support, enable enterprise content management, consolidation environment. The ECM should have been properly budgeted in the main budget allocation. This shift cannot be accepted under any circumstances. The question remains, why was this not budgeted in the main budget? In conclusion, whilst the additional funding to the department is welcome, how the money is allocated and shifted between programs for various reasons in not supported. The continued underspending of 3.8 million on compensation of employees and the surrendering these funds to Provincial Revenue Fund is not supported at all. This department, like any other, always falls short of filing of posts, but continue to splash funds elsewhere meant for that purpose. Therefore, the adjustment appropriation budget is not supported. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Gopi. In the absence of the ACDP and the EFF, I now see the DA. I see the Honourable, the Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. Baie dankie aan die lede wat deelgeneem het. Agbare Gopi, die meeste van u bekommernisse wat u nou aangeraak het, is deeglik en intensief in ons is in ons staande komitee bespreek. En ek wil net sê dat die sevens 'n wêreldklas gehalte gebeurtenis soos die sevens het tot gevolg dat ons geweldig baie hoop vir Suid-Afrika, vir die Weskaap en vir Suid-Afrika bou. En ons het 'n ooreenkoms dat die nagevolge of wat die spin-off gaan wees van die sevens, dat ons dit gaan gebruik in ons gemeenskappe om ons kinders te bemagtig vir talentidentifisering en ook dan implementeer in ons rugbyprogramme. Dan wil ek net sê baie dankie aan agbare Leonard Max.
Direct your inquiry to the chair,
vir u
please.
bydrae gedurende die jaar en die leiding wat u gegee het. Baie dankie aan elke lid van die komitee vir u deeglike oorsig en konstruktiewe bydrae wat u by elke komiteevergadering gelewer het. En ek wil net noem dat kultuur en sport is volgens my die heel belangrikste departement. Want deur middel van kultuur en sport skep ons geleenthede en ons implementeer ons programme in die gemeenskappe om 'n nasie te bou, ons diversiteit te vier oor verskillende grense heen. Ek wens aan elkeen 'n geseënde Kersgetyd en ek moet sê, moet asseblief nie drink en bestuur nie. Baie dankie.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I think it has been agreed by consensus that if we had made up some time, we would proceed to lunch. And I have been informed by the Chief Whip, and I believe there's been engagement, that we will now proceed to vote 12. Am I correct in my understanding? Honourable Ace, Chief Whip Wiley. So I'm now going to ask